The Deep Space Monitoring Station Keeler Prime had watched empty stars for 300 cycles. Nothing ever happened there. That was the point. The system sat far beyond trade lanes, war zones, and borders. It was a quiet space. Safe space. The kind of place the Galactic Council used to test new sensors and train junior officers who would never see real danger. On this cycle, the station's scanners were running a routine sweep. Then the screens went wrong. At first, it was subtle. A ripple across the long-range display. A distortion so small the junior sensor officer assumed it was background radiation. He recalibrated. The ripple stayed. The system flagged it as impossible. No mass. No energy. No velocity. Yet something was there, pulling at the fabric of space itself. "Supervisor," the officer said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm getting phantom readings." The supervisor leaned over his console, annoyed. "Clear it." "I did. 3 times. Another alarm chimed. Then another. Across the command deck, screens began to flicker. Data streams contradicted each other. Distance markers stretched, then collapsed. One scanner showed empty space. Another showed something vast occupying the same coordinates. The station AI paused. That alone froze the room. Station AIs did not pause. "Report," the supervisor demanded. The AI responded slowly, its synthetic voice stripped of emotion, but not uncertainty. "Unidentified spatial anomalies detected. Quantity unknown." The ripples widened. Space bent. Stars behind the distortion warped, their light curving as if dragged by invisible gravity. Officers stared as the laws of physics, laws they trusted their lives to, began to fail. Then the screaming started. Not from the crew. From the scanners. Every sensor array overloaded at once. Warnings flooded the command deck. Heat spiked in circuits never designed to process this much data. The station shuddered as power rerouted automatically. "Shut down non-essential systems," someone shouted. Before the order could be completed, the distortion tore open. Something arrived. Not through hyperspace. Not through known jump corridors. It simply unfolded into existence. The first silhouette appeared. Massive, angular, wrapped in shadows that swallowed starlight. Its size alone eclipsed the station's largest dreadnoughts. Then a second. Then dozens more. They formed with terrifying precision, spreading across the void in perfect geometric patterns. No engine flares. No heat bloom. No electromagnetic chatter. Just a silent arrival. The command deck fell quiet. Veteran officers who had survived fleet battles felt their breath catch. The junior crew froze where they stood, unable to look away. The station AI spoke again, slower now. "Mass estimates exceed Council warship limits by a factor of recalculating error." One officer whispered, "Those aren't ships." The supervisor swallowed. Zoom. Visual magnification sharpened the image, and dread settled into the room. These were ships. Warships. Their hulls were scarred, layered, built for endurance rather than beauty. Armor plates overlapped like the scales of some ancient predator. Weapon ports lined their spines, not decorative, not ceremonial, but brutally functional. These vessels were not designed to intimidate. They were designed to survive hell. No registry codes, the communications officer said. No language tags. No transponder signals. "Are they charging weapons?" the supervisor asked. "No," came the answer, voice shaking. "They don't need to." The station's main scanner tried to lock onto the largest vessel. It failed. I tried again. Failed harder. Then the scanner overloaded. The console detonated in a burst of sparks and plasma. The officer manning it was thrown backward, motionless. Emergency shutters slammed down. Fire suppression systems triggered. Smoke filled the deck. The AI continued, its voice now clipped. "Warning. Energy readings suggest weapons capable of stellar-scale interaction." Someone laughed nervously. "That's not possible." The AI did not respond. Instead, a new signal appeared. A transmission. Single band. Narrow. Old. So old it shouldn't have worked. The signal bypassed the station's encryption without effort and injected itself directly into every display. Text appeared. Not alien glyphs. Not council standard. Simple symbols. Human letters. The room went silent as the translation software caught up. The words resolved slowly, deliberately, as if whoever sent them wanted to be understood perfectly. "This is a military formation. Do not approach. Do not interfere. A historian on the deck felt cold spread through his body. Humans are extinct, someone said weakly. The historian shook his head. No, they were forgotten. The supervisor turned. What? The historian's voice trembled. They were classified as a death world species. Too violent. Too unstable. The council believed they wiped themselves out. Another line of text appeared. You are observing the Terran War Fleet. Several officers backed away from their consoles as if the words themselves carried weight. Terran. The station AI searched its archives automatically. Ancient files opened, sealed, ignored, marked irrelevant. Casualty figures. War doctrines. Psychological profiles. Every data point ended the same way. Extreme adaptability. Unmatched resilience. Escalation without surrender. The historian whispered. They don't send fleets like this unless the war has already started. A final line of text appeared. This is not first contact. This is a return. Outside the station, the human warships adjusted formation. Not toward the station, toward the galaxy beyond. And across Keeler Prime, every alarm screamed at once as the scanners recorded one final conclusion before failing completely. These ships were not here to explore. They were here because something worse was coming. And humanity had come to meet it first. The Galactic Council chamber was built to make species feel small. It hung above a blue dwarf star, a vast ring of obsidian platforms suspended in controlled gravity. Delegates from hundreds of civilizations gathered there, each seat customized for biology, atmosphere, and ego. It was a place of debate, posturing, and controlled fear. Panic had no place there. Until now. The emergency session was called within minutes of the Keeler Prime transmission. Entire star systems rerouted communication bandwidth. Fleets halted drills. Trade lanes froze. The chamber filled faster than it ever had in recorded history. Holographic projections of the Terran warships hovered at the center of the ring. Silent. Massive. Unforgiving. The first speaker was a high-ranking Valero strategist, his voice steady but strained. Are these images confirmed? They are, replied the council archivist. Verified by 3 independent stations. All sensors failed in the same way. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. One delegate leaned forward. Are you telling us an extinct species fielded a fleet that broke our scanners by existing? The archivist hesitated. They were never confirmed extinct. Only dismissed. That word carried weight. Dismissed. A Lyran envoy scoffed. Humans were a minor species. Short-lived. Violent. They barely reached interstellar capability before vanishing. Yes, the archivist said quietly. And yet they left behind sealed archives we were ordered never to reopen. Silence followed. The archivist gestured, and the chamber dimmed. Ancient data flooded the central projection. Grainy footage, old star maps, battle simulations written in outdated code. This classification predates the modern council. The archivist continued. Humanity was evaluated early in their expansion. Their homeworld was labeled a death world. High gravity, extreme climate swings, constant natural disasters. Several delegates nodded. Death world species were rare and dangerous. They should have struggled just to survive, someone said. They did, the archivist replied. And they adapted. The projection shifted to human conflict records. Wars stacked upon wars. Not single campaigns, but centuries of near-constant fighting. Not against external threats, but against themselves, their environment, scarcity, and extinction events. They learned logistics before diplomacy, the archivist said. Total war before a unified government. They optimized destruction before peace. A strategist frowned. Then why did they disappear? The archivist paused. That is where the records become unclear. The chamber stirred uneasily. We assumed self-annihilation, the archivist said. Nuclear conflict. Ecological collapse. That assumption allowed us to seal their files and move on. Another delegate leaned forward. And now, the archivist said, they have returned with warships that exceed our most advanced designs by centuries. A military commander rose from his platform. If this is true, why have they not attacked? Why announce themselves at all? Before the archivist could answer, a new alert cut through the chamber. Another human transmission. Shorter this time. Clearer. The words appeared across every surface in the council chamber. You are not the target. You are in the way. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over one another. Demands for mobilization clashed with calls for restraint. Some argued for immediate alliance. Others demanded a preemptive strike before the humans acted. A senior counselor struck the central dais, restoring order. Enough. We will not panic like children. He turned to the military commander. What are our odds if this becomes a conflict? The commander did not answer immediately. He ran simulations, fleet engagements, defensive formations, electronic warfare. Numbers scrolled faster and faster, then stopped. The commander exhaled slowly. Against one Terran ship, he said. Uncertain. The chamber went still. And against the entire fleet? The counselor asked. The commander met his gaze. There is no scenario where we win. A ripple of fear spread through the chamber. They are not just stronger, the commander continued. They fight differently. Their formations suggest layered redundancy. Their ships operate independently, but think collectively. They expect losses and have planned for them. A delegate whispered, That's insane. No, the archivist said softly. That's human. Another transmission arrived. This one carried data. Star charts lit up, ancient routes, forgotten systems, regions of space long abandoned by the Council. Then overlays appeared. Warnings, markers, battlefields. Not recent ones, old ones. The archivist stared. These locations, they predate our oldest recorded wars. The human message followed. You call this space safe. We call it quiet. The meaning settled slowly, like a spreading shadow. A scientist spoke, voice trembling. They didn't disappear. They withdrew. To do what? Someone demanded. The data answered before the humans did. Massive construction signatures. Deep space facilities hidden inside nebulae. Star forges operating beyond sensor range. Entire regions stripped of resources long ago and never questioned. They were preparing, the commander said. For invasion? A delegate asked. The archivist shook his head. For survival. The chamber darkened again as the projection changed. Something else appeared. Not human. Not council. Alien in a way that made even hardened species recoil. A vast, angular shape stretched across the hologram. Fractal limbs. Energy signatures that did not align with normal matter. Entire systems marked as lost around it. The archivist's voice was barely audible. This threat appeared in human records centuries before we detected it. Entire civilizations erased. Stars destabilized. Space itself is damaged. A delegate whispered, Why didn't they warn us? The answer came instantly. A final human transmission appeared. You were not ready. We were not either. The chamber was silent. The counselor lowered himself back onto his platform. So, he said slowly, the humans returned, not to conquer us. No, the commander replied. They returned, the archivist finished, because the war never ended. Outside the council chamber, far beyond the blue dwarf star, the Terran War fleet began to move again. Not toward the council, but toward the dark edge of the galaxy, where something ancient had begun to stir. And this time, humanity was not planning to fight alone. The Terran War fleet did not advance as one. It separated. Across the dark edge of the galaxy, human ships peeled away from the main formation in precise, deliberate arcs. Some vanished into folded space. Others drifted into positions that made no tactical sense to alien observers. To the Galactic Council's military analysts, it looked like chaos. To the humans, it was containment. Deep within a forward command vessel, its hull layered with centuries of battle scars, human officers stood in silence as data flowed across holographic displays. No shouting, no panic, only calm focus. Admiral Kale Ward watched the galaxy map shift in real time. Red zones pulsed along the outer rim. Systems the Council barely monitored. Regions written off as empty or unstable. They're accelerating, a tactical officer reported. Not using standard drives. Ward nodded once. They always do. A younger officer hesitated. Permission to ask, sir? Granted. Why now? The officer asked. We've tracked their movement patterns for decades. They stayed dormant. Ward's eyes did not leave the display. Dormant isn't the same as gone. The map zoomed in. At first, the system looked normal. A quiet star. Sparse asteroid belts. No inhabited worlds. Then the distortions appeared. Space itself seemed bruised. Dark seams stretching across the void like cracks in glass. Sensors struggled to interpret what they were seeing. Distance fluctuated. Mass readings spiked and vanished. Alien analysts observing from Council-linked stations began to panic. "That's not a fleet," one of them whispered. "That's a wound." The first Council patrol ships arrived moments later. They were light cruisers, fast and well-armed by Council standards. Their commanders believed the humans were exaggerating, that this was another unknown anomaly, dangerous but manageable. They opened hails. "Unidentified Terran vessels," the patrol commander transmitted. "You are entering a restricted region under Council authority. State your intentions." The human ships did not respond. They did not turn weapons. They simply moved. One Terran vessel drifted forward, placing itself directly between the patrol fleet and the distortion. A human voice finally came through, calm and unraised. "Withdraw." The patrol commander stiffened. "You do not have jurisdiction here." The human voice replied, "Neither will you in 12 minutes." Before the commander could respond, the distortion expanded. Something pushed through. The void tore open, not explosively, but with a slow, terrible inevitability. Light bent inward. Energy drained from nearby space, as if consumed. The thing that emerged did not resemble a ship. It had no clear front or rear. Its structure shifted constantly, folding and unfolding in ways that made the eyes ache. Sections phased in and out of existence. Its presence alone disrupted gravity. Council sensors screamed. One patrol ship lost power instantly, its systems collapsing as if rewritten. Another vanished entirely, swallowed by a ripple in space. Panic hit the patrol fleet. "Fire!" the commander shouted. Energy lances streaked toward the entity. They passed through it. The thing did not react. Instead, it moved. A limb, if it could be called that, extended, brushing against a cruiser. The ship folded in half without exploding, its hull compressing into nothing before disappearing. The human vessel between them powered up. Its weapons did not glow. Space around the target darkened, then collapsed. The entity recoiled, not from damage, but from resistance. For the first time, it changed course. The human ship fired again, and again. Each strike did not destroy, but pushed, forced the thing back, centimeter by centimeter, away from populated space. Human ships converged, forming a lattice around the distortion. Fields overlapped. Space stabilized under sheer force of control. The human admiral spoke again, voice steady. "Containment Phase 1 complete." Across the galaxy, Council observers watched in stunned silence. "They're not fighting it," a scientist said. "They're managing it." On the Council command deck, the military commander replayed the footage again and again. "That weapon," he said. "It's not designed to kill." "No," the archivist replied. "It's designed to hold." The truth began to sink in. The humans had not returned to wage war against the galaxy. They had returned to take responsibility for it. Another human transmission spread across Council channels. This one was longer. Not a threat. A warning. "This entity is a scout. You have seen one because we failed to stop it earlier." The Council chamber erupted. "A scout," someone shouted. "You're saying that thing was only a probe?" "Yes," the human admiral replied. "And it is already transmitting what it learned." Fear spread like fire. "Learned what?" the counselor demanded. "That you exist," the admiral said, "and that you are undefended." Silence followed. The human voice continued. "We fought them alone once. We lost entire systems buying time. We survived because we adapted faster than they did." A new projection appeared. Human battle records from centuries past. Fleets shattered. Stars collapsing. Entire worlds evacuated or sacrificed. "We withdrew from the galactic stage not because we were defeated," the admiral said, "but because standing beside you would have killed you." A council delegate whispered. "So you hid?" "Yes," the admiral replied. "And we built." Human ships continued to maneuver with terrifying precision, forming defensive lines far beyond council borders. Engineers deployed structures that unfolded from the hulls of warships, massive anchors that locked into space itself, reinforcing reality where it was weakest. The galaxy watched as humans repaired space like engineers fixing a breach. Another alarm sounded. Multiple distortions appeared across the rim. Not one, dozens. The commander turned pale. "They're coming everywhere." The human response was immediate. Terran fleets accelerated toward the new threats without waiting for council approval. Some council admirals protested. "You're spreading too thin." The human admiral shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We planned for this." Human ships moved into prearranged positions, each one arriving exactly where it needed to be. The galaxy realized something terrifying. This was not humanity reacting. This was humanity executing a plan centuries in the making. The human admiral issued one final message to the council. "We will hold the line," he said. "But understand this." The screen darkened. Then the last words appeared. "If we fail, you will not get a second warning." As the transmission ended, the human fleet surged forward into the dark, toward the growing tears in reality. And for the first time in its long, comfortable history, the galaxy understood the cost of having forgotten humanity. They had not vanished. They had been standing between everyone else and the end. The first human ship was lost 17 minutes after containment began. It did not explode. It did not broadcast a distress call. It simply went dark. From the Council's observation platforms, analysts watched the Terran vessel hold position at the edge of a growing distortion. Its stabilizing fields flared brighter than any before, layers of invisible force locking reality into place by sheer will and engineering. Then the distortion pushed back. Space screamed, not audibly, but mathematically. Coordinates twisted. Distances became meaningless. The human ship's outline blurred, stretched, and compressed as if it were being pulled through different versions of itself at once. Inside the ship, alarms sounded for the first time. Field integrity at 60%, an officer reported calmly. "Redirect reserve mass," the ship's commander replied. His voice never rose. "We hold." "But sir, we hold," the commander repeated. The ship anchored itself deeper into space, dumping raw energy and mass into the containment lattice. For a moment, just a moment, the distortion stalled. Then it learned. The entity changed frequency. Not randomly, not violently, intelligently. The distortion shifted its interaction with reality, bypassing layers the humans had designed centuries ago. It pressed against the ship in a way the engineers had always feared but never witnessed outside simulations. The Terran vessel fractured, not from impact, but from contradiction. Two physical states attempted to occupy the same space at once. The ship folded inward and vanished. No debris, no radiation burst, just absence. Across every human command channel, a single marker is updated. Anchor lost. No one spoke. Admiral Ward closed his eyes for half a second. "Update the lattice," he said quietly. "Adjust all remaining anchors. It's adapting faster than predicted." "Yes, sir." Across the rim, human ships shifted position instantly. New fields overlapped old ones. Redundancies activated. Systems the Council did not even have names for came online. To alien observers, it looked like panic. To humans, mourning was delayed. The Council chamber erupted as the footage replayed. "You lost a ship," a delegate shouted. Just like that. The human liaison on the channel did not argue. "Yes," she said. "We expected to." "That thing erased it," another voice cried. "How many more can you afford to lose?" The liaison's expression hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. "As many as it takes," she replied. "That was the agreement our crews signed centuries ago." The Council fell silent. A military analyst leaned forward, eyes locked on the data. "That ship didn't fail because it was weak," he said slowly. "It failed because it held long enough for the rest of the line to adjust." He looked up, shaken. "You're using your ships as sacrificial stabilizers." The liaison nodded once. "If we don't, entire star systems die." The entity struck again. Another distortion expanded violently, tearing open near a populated fringe world, an agricultural hub with no defenses, no fleets, no warning systems capable of understanding what was happening. Council panic peaked. "Evacuate the planet," someone screamed. "There's no time," a scientist replied. "At current expansion rates, minutes at most." Human ships altered course. 3 Terran vessels broke formation and accelerated toward the new breach, engines screaming through folded space. They arrived before the Council's evacuation protocols even finished loading. The leading ship transmitted one short message on an open channel. "Begin planetary lift." The Council commander stared at the display. "You can't evacuate a world that fast." The human officer replied, "We're not." The ships deployed. From their hulls unfolded massive structures, rings of light and shadow that wrapped around the planet's upper atmosphere. Gravity shifted. Tides surged. The planet groaned as continental plates strained. "What are they doing?" a council scientist whispered. The human ship fired, not at the entity, but at the planet. Energy surged into the crust, stabilizing fault lines, reinforcing the world's core, locking it into a rigid gravitational frame. They're anchoring the planet, the scientist realized in horror. They're turning it into a fixed point. The distortion hit moments later. Reality buckled. Space twisted violently around the anchored world, but the planet held, its reinforced structure resisting the pull long enough for the human ships to interpose themselves. One ship was torn apart instantly. Another held for 6 seconds longer. The third transmitted a final data burst, millions of calculations, adjustments, and corrections, before it, too, vanished. The distortion recoiled. The planet survived. On its surface, billions of lives continued uninterrupted, unaware that existence itself had nearly failed around them. In the council chamber, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, suffocating. They just sacrificed 3 warships, a delegate said softly, for a world that isn't even allied with them. The archivist's voice trembled. Not sacrificed. He looked at the casualty report streaming in. Spent. A new human transmission appeared across council channels. This one was not calm. It was not angry. It was honest. They are testing us. Each incursion is a question. Each loss is an answer. The counselor clenched his claws. How many questions can they ask before you run out of answers? The human response came without hesitation. More than you think. Fewer than we want. Across the rim, the number of distortions increased again. Not dozens. Hundreds. The galaxy's edge looked wounded, space torn open in a chain of spreading fractures. Council fleets mobilized at last, but their weapons passed uselessly through the entities. Shields failed. Sensors lied. Ships vanished without warning. Panic turned to despair. Then the humans changed tactics. Terran fleets regrouped into dense formations around the most critical systems. Not evenly spread, but deliberately uneven. Why are they abandoning sectors? A council commander demanded. They're not, a human strategist replied. They're choosing where to die. Human ships began deploying weapons the council had never seen. Not beams. Not missiles. Conceptual weapons. Localized reality collapses. Controlled temporal drag. Fields that forced the entities into predictable states, even if only for seconds. Each second costs lives. Each second bought time. The galaxy watched as humans fought a war that could not be won, only delayed. A young council aide whispered, tears forming. They're going to burn themselves out. The human strategist heard him. Yes, she said softly. That's the point. A final message broadcast from Admiral Ward reached every command channel, human and alien alike. We are entering the attrition phase, he said. From this moment on, losses will accelerate. The counselor leaned forward, voice hoarse. Then tell us what to do. Ward's expression did not change. Survive, he said. Build what we taught you. Harden your worlds. Learn fast. The transmission cut. Outside, the Terran fleet surged forward again, smaller now, scarred, burning through reserves that could never be replaced quickly. And as the first human warships fell by the dozens, something else stirred beyond the rim. The entities were no longer probing. They were arriving. And humanity was running out of time. The council finally did what it had avoided for centuries. It listened. Emergency authority was invoked across every member civilization. Protocols once buried under layers of politics were dragged into the open. Shipyards were commandeered. Research vaults unlocked. Ancient restrictions on weapon development were suspended without debate. And for the first time in galactic history, the council accepted instructions from another species. Human data packages flooded council networks. Not simplified briefings. Not diplomatic summaries. Raw war doctrine. Mathematics that described how reality failed under stress. Engineering principles for reinforcing space itself. Psychological profiles of an enemy that did not think in terms of victory, only consumption. Council scientists struggled to keep up. This is beyond our understanding, one of them admitted, staring at equations that redefine distance and time as variables rather than constants. They're treating the universe like a machine that can break. A human engineer responded calmly. It is a machine. It just wasn't built to last forever. Across the rim, the situation worsened. Containment lines held, but barely. Distortions multiplied faster than humans could anchor them. The entities no longer arrived as scouts. Larger forms pushed through, their presence warping entire regions of space before fully emerging. Human casualties climbed. Not announced. Not mourned. Just logged in. Admiral Ward stood alone in the forward command chamber, watching the casualty counter rise. Each number represented a ship, a crew, a promise kept. A communications officer approached quietly. "Sir, we've lost contact with Anchor Group Delta." Ward nodded once. "Mark them." The officer hesitated. "Sir, that group was holding 3 inhabited systems." Ward's jaw tightened. Then they did their job. The officer left, understanding. The council, however, did not. A senior counselor demanded a direct channel. His image flickered into existence, mandibles trembling. "You're abandoning sectors," he shouted. "Whole regions are collapsing." Ward turned to face him. "Yes," he said evenly. "Because holding everything means losing everything. You said you would protect us." "I said we would teach you how to survive," Ward replied. "Those are not the same thing." The counselor recoiled. "Then tell us. What are you not telling us?" Ward was silent for a moment. Then he answered, "We are not winning." The words hit harder than any alarm. "We never planned to," Ward continued. "This is not a war that ends with a decisive strike. The entities don't retreat. They don't negotiate. They adapt until the universe stops resisting." "Then why fight at all?" the counselor demanded. "Because," Ward said, "they learn slower when we make it expensive." A new projection appeared behind him. A human archive, older than any previously shared. The title alone sent chills through the council chamber. "The Last Stand Protocol." Ward's voice remained steady. "This protocol was created after we realized the truth. We cannot destroy them completely, but we can shape the battlefield. We can change the rules enough that something else becomes possible." The council leaned forward as one. "What?" someone whispered. "Birth," Ward said. The word echoed strangely in the chamber. "We can force the universe to create something new," he continued. "A condition the entities cannot exist within. But it requires time. Centuries, if done alone." The counselor's eyes widened. "You don't have centuries." "No," Ward agreed. "We have months." The projection shifted again. Human shipyards hidden in deep space. Not building warships, but vast structures surrounding artificial stars. Engines the size of moons. Devices designed not to destroy, but to change. "We call it the Horizon Engine," Ward said. "It alters local reality constants. Permanently." A scientist gasped. "That would affect everything. Trade lanes. Star systems. Entire regions." "Yes," Ward said. "It will reshape the galaxy." "And the entities?" the counselor asked. Ward's expression hardened. "They won't be able to cross it." Silence fell. "You're talking about building a wall across the galaxy," a delegate said. "No," Ward replied. "A scar." Council resistance flared immediately. "You don't have the authority." "We're not asking," Ward interrupted. "We're informing you." The council erupted into argument. Some demanded immediate cooperation. Others accused humanity of planning domination under the guise of protection. A few proposed seizing human technology by force. Ward waited. When the noise peaked, he spoke again, quietly. "We already started." The chamber froze. Across the rim, human fleets began to withdraw, not retreating, but repositioning. Entire formations fell back toward a central axis the council had not noticed before. Human losses slowed. Not because the threat weakened, but because the humans stopped spending lives to hold the impossible. Instead, they began funneling the entities. "They're hurting them," a council analyst whispered. "Forcing them toward a single region." "Yes," Ward confirmed. "Toward the construction zone." A counselor slammed the dais. "You're using our space as bait." Ward did not deny it. "You didn't defend it," he said. "We did." The first Horizon engine component activated 2 days later. The galaxy felt it, not as an explosion, but as a pressure change. Hyperlanes warped. Long-distance communication lagged. Astronomers reported stars flickering out of phase with known models. Reality was being edited. The entities reacted instantly. They surged toward the disturbance, abandoning other incursions. Entire clusters of distortions collapsed inward, converging on the growing anomaly. Human fleets followed. This time, they did not form containment lines. They formed a wall. Ship after ship took position along a vast arc of space, overlapping fields, interlocking weapons, burning through reserves with no intention of recovery. Council fleets arrived behind them, awkward, underpowered, terrified. Human commanders transmitted simple instructions. Hold position. Do not pursue. Do not break formation. And most importantly, do not try to be heroes. The first major entity wave struck the wall. Human ships vanished by the dozens. But the line held. The Horizon engine continued to grow. A council officer whispered, "They're dying in place." A human captain overheard him. "Yes," she said. "So you don't have to." The counselor finally understood. This was not humanity saving the galaxy. This was humanity buying it a future, one paid for in blood, steel, and centuries of preparation. As the wall burned brighter, Admiral Ward issued one final system-wide transmission. "To every world listening," he said, voice echoing across the stars. "You asked why we returned with warships." The image shifted to show the burning line. Human ships holding back impossible darkness. "We were not coming to conquer you," Ward continued. "We were coming to make sure you had time to become more than victims." The Horizon engine reached critical mass. Space screamed again, but this time, it screamed in resistance. The entities slammed into the forming boundary, and for the first time since the war began, they stopped moving forward. The galaxy held its breath. Human ships burned. But the future, at last, had something to lean on. The wall did not break. It bled. Along the newly forming boundary, human warships burned against a pressure no species had ever faced. The Horizon engine pulsed behind them, slow, deliberate, unfinished, rewriting reality one unstable layer at a time. Every pulse made the boundary stronger. Every pulse made the enemy angrier. The entities struck again, not as scattered incursions, but as a coordinated mass. Space ahead of the wall darkened, folded, then tore open across thousands of kilometers. Shapes emerged that dwarfed anything seen before, structures so large their outlines refused to stay still. Council sensors failed instantly. Human sensors degraded, but kept working. "Wave density is increasing," a human tactical officer reported. "They're synchronizing." Admiral Ward stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back. "They learned," he said, "faster than projected." A nearby captain swallowed. "Then this is the main assault." "Yes," Ward replied. "And they finally understand what we're building." The first impact hit the wall like a cosmic avalanche. Entire sections of the boundary flexed as reality strained. Human ships closest to the front vanished in cascading failures, some torn apart, others erased cleanly as if never present. The wall held. Barely. Behind the line, Council fleets watched in stunned horror. "They're losing ships by the hundreds," a Council admiral whispered. "Why aren't they pulling back?" A human liaison answered without turning. "Because if they do, the boundary collapses." "But they'll die." "Yes," she said. "That's the calculation." The Horizon engine shuddered. Construction platforms the size of continents glowed as power surged through them. Entire artificial stars were drained to fuel the next phase. Engineers worked knowing every second mattered, and that many would not live to see completion. An alarm sounded in Ward's command chamber. "Sir," an officer said, voice tight. "Boundary integrity dropping in Sector 9. Ward nodded. "Redeploy reserve." The officer hesitated. "There is no reserve." Ward looked at the display. Then he made a decision no council leader would have dared. "Open civilian corridors," he said. The officer stared. "Sir." "Recall the ARC ships," Ward continued. "Bring them into the line." A stunned silence followed. "Those ships aren't combat-rated," the officer protested. "They're evacuation vessels. Population carriers." "Yes," Ward said quietly. "And they carry the same anchors." The meaning landed hard. Council observers heard the order and erupted. "You can't use civilian ships as shields," a delegate shouted across the channel. Ward turned to face the camera. "They volunteered," he said. "Every one of them." The ARC ships arrived minutes later. Vast, slow-moving vessels packed with millions of humans in cryostasis. Their hulls bore no weapons, no heavy armor. But inside them were anchors, devices capable of reinforcing reality at terrible cost. As the ARC ships took position, a broadcast echoed across all human channels. This one was not strategic. It was personal. To those working for final deployment, the voice said, "Your families will live. Your names will be remembered. You are not forgotten." Inside the ARC ships, cryopods opened. Men and women woke to alarms and dim lights, already knowing why. No panic, no protests, just quiet preparation. Council monitors watched in disbelief as civilians took control of ships meant to carry generations into safety and instead steered them into annihilation. The next entity wave hit. Arc ships began to fail almost immediately. Each one held long enough to stabilize a section of the wall, seconds, sometimes minutes, before collapsing into nothing. But with every loss, the boundary thickened. The entities slammed against it again and again. For the first time, they failed to adapt quickly. They're slowing, a human analyst reported. Their structure isn't compatible with the new constants. Ward closed his eyes briefly. Good, he said. Then we're hurting them. The Horizon engine entered its final phase. Reality screamed across entire sectors. Hyperlanes snapped. Star charts became useless overnight. The galaxy's geometry changed forever. Council worlds felt it. Gravity shifted slightly. Time lagged in unpredictable ways. Entire technologies became obsolete in an instant. Panic spread, but it was drowned out by something else. Hope. They're doing it, a council scientist whispered. They're actually sealing them out. The entities realized it too. They surged with desperation now, abandoning subtlety. Entire masses threw themselves against the forming boundary, sacrificing coherence to force breaches. Human losses spiked. Admiral Ward's casualty counter blurred into meaninglessness. Sir, an officer said softly. We're approaching collapse thresholds across the line. Ward stared at the wall, at the burning silhouettes of ships holding the impossible. How long, he asked. 6 minutes, came the reply. Maybe less. Ward nodded. Then we end it. He activated a channel reserved for one purpose only. All human commanders appeared at once, faces scarred, exhausted, resolute. We're out of time, Ward said. You know what comes next. No one objected. This order applies to all remaining vessels, he continued. Combat, civilian, command. A pause. Activate final anchor protocol. Across the wall, human ships began to glow. Not with weapons fire, but with collapsing mass fields. Anchors overloaded deliberately, converting ships themselves into fixed points of reality. Suicide, rewritten as engineering. Council observers screamed protests into the void. Human ships did not answer. The final wave struck. The boundary flared brighter than 1,000 stars. Then, silence. The entities slammed against the completed barrier and shattered, not destroyed, but dispersed, unable to exist within the rewritten constants. They recoiled. They fled. Some simply ceased. The galaxy shook as the Horizon engine locked into permanence. The war was over. Not because humanity won, but because humanity endured long enough for the universe to change its mind. The wall dimmed. What remained was not a shining barrier, but a vast, invisible scar stretching across the galaxy, forever separating what could exist from what could not. Council fleets drifted forward cautiously. No enemy remained. Only wreckage. Only empty space where thousands of human ships had been. Admiral Ward stood alone in his darkened chamber. A final status report appeared. Horizon engine, stable entity presence, null human fleet survivors, 4.3%. Ward exhaled slowly. Behind him, a junior officer whispered, Sir, was it worth it? Ward turned. Outside the viewport, alien worlds glowed peacefully, unchanged, alive, unaware how close they had come to oblivion. Yes, Ward said quietly. Every time. Weeks later, the council reconvened. This time, the chamber felt different. Smaller. Humbled. A single line was added to the galactic archives, under a classification no species had ever held before. Humanity status. Extinct in force function, the last line that held. And across the scarred edge of the galaxy, silence returned. Not the quiet of ignorance, but the quiet earned by sacrifice. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no victory broadcasts, no triumphal assemblies, no banners hung across stars. There was only silence, and the weight of it. In the weeks after the Horizon engine locked reality into its new shape, the Council's fleets drifted cautiously along the edge of the scar. Sensors confirmed what human instruments already knew. The entities were gone. Not destroyed. Not defeated in the way wars were usually ended. Excluded. The rewritten constants of space rejected them completely. Where they once pushed and adapted, Now they simply could not exist. Attempts to probe the boundary resulted in nothing. No reaction, no resistance, no presence at all. The war had ended without a final battle cry. Instead, it ended with absence. Council worlds began to recover slowly. Trade lanes were recalculated. Technologies rewritten to function under the new laws of reality. Entire academic fields were abandoned overnight, replaced by emergency sciences built on human frameworks. Every civilization felt smaller, not because humanity ruled them, but because humanity was no longer there. The surviving Terran ships did not regroup near the Council. They withdrew. What remained of the fleet, barely more than a handful of scarred vessels, slipped away toward human-controlled space, following routes that no longer existed on Council maps. No one stopped them. No one could. On a quiet Council relay station overlooking the scar, an archivist stood alone, watching stars shimmer strangely where reality had been reinforced. A junior aide approached, hesitant. "Sir, the Records Committee is asking how to classify this event." The archivist did not turn. "They already know the answer. They want a term," the aide said. "For the war." The archivist considered the endless darkness beyond the boundary. "Call it what it was," he said softly. "A payment." The council chamber convened one last time under emergency authority. This time, there was no shouting. Delegates spoke quietly, carefully, as if raising their voices might remind the universe how fragile it truly was. A senior counselor stood at the dais, his posture different from before, less commanding, more respectful. "We owe humanity a debt that cannot be repaid," he said. "Their fleets are gone. Their population, unknown. Their future, uncertain." Murmurs rippled gently through the chamber. "They did not demand territory," the counselor continued. "They did not claim authority. They did not ask for thanks." He paused. "Which leaves us with a responsibility." The archivist rose slowly. "Our records are wrong," he said. "They always were." With a gesture, he displayed the old classification file, the one that had dismissed humanity centuries ago. Species, human status, irrelevant risk, containable. The archivist deleted it. A new entry appeared. Species, humanity origin, death world known trait, adaptation through sacrifice. The chamber remained silent. "They were not saviors," the archivist continued. "They were not conquerors. They were not gods." He looked around the ring of delegates. They were what happens when survival becomes culture. The council voted unanimously. A resolution unlike any before it passed without amendment. The scar would be preserved. No colonization. No experiments. No attempts to reverse or exploit it. It would remain untouched, a reminder etched across the galaxy. They named it together. The human line. Far from council space, deep within regions no alien ship could safely navigate, a single Terran vessel drifted near a dim star. Its hull was patched and burned. Entire sections were powered down permanently. The name etched along its side was barely legible. UNS Perseverance. Inside, Admiral Cale Ward stood in a quiet observation chamber. He was older now, not by years, but by losses. A small group of survivors shared the ship with him. Engineers, medics, pilots who had lost entire squadrons. No one spoke much anymore. A junior officer approached hesitantly. "Sir, long-range passive sensors are picking something up." Ward turned slowly. "Entity signatures?" "No, sir," the officer said. "Council broadcasts." Ward nodded. "Put it through." The transmission was unencrypted. Public. The counselor's voice echoed through the chamber. "To any human survivors who may receive this, the galaxy acknowledges its debt. We will remember what was done in our name." Ward listened without expression. The message continued. "The scar will remain untouched. The history will not be softened. Humanity will not be forgotten again." The transmission ended. Silence returned. The junior officer looked at Ward. "Sir, they're honoring us." Ward stared at the star beyond the viewport. "No," he said quietly. "They're honoring the dead." A pause. Then the officer asked the question no one else dared. "What happens now?" Ward took a long breath. "Now," he said. "Now we rebuild." Quietly, the ship adjusted course, slipping into deeper space. Behind it, the galaxy moved on, changed, shaken, alive. Years passed. Then decades. On council worlds, children grew up learning new constants of physics. History lessons included a chapter no teacher ever rushed through. The return. The line. The ones who held. Humanity did not reappear. No fleets returned. No envoys arrived. No demands were made. Some whispered they were extinct at last. Others believed they were watching, from the dark, from beyond maps, from places where survival demanded vigilance. Occasionally, long-range sensors detected impossible anomalies near the human line. Brief stabilizations. Minor corrections. As if something unseen still stood guard. In a forgotten archive, a final human message was discovered years later, embedded deep in the Horizon Engine's foundational code. Not addressed to the Council. Not addressed to the galaxy. Just a record. We did not win. We endured. If you are reading this, then it was enough. The archivist sealed the message and added one final note to humanity's file. Roll. The species that stood between the end and everyone else. And across the stars, life continued. Not because the galaxy was strong, but because, once, a Death World species refused to step aside. Long after the war ended, the galaxy began to notice the smallest, strangest thing. Nothing was wrong. No new incursions. No distortions. No anomalies spreading from the scar called the human line. That should have been comforting. Instead, it was unsettling. Civilizations rebuilt fleets, but no one tested them near the line. Explorers charted new routes, but every map ended the same way. Blank space where sensors refused to look too closely. Trade resumed. Politics returned. Arguments flared again in the council chamber. Yet beneath it all ran a quiet understanding. The universe had been rewritten once. It could happen again. On a research station orbiting a neutral star, a team of council scientists studied long-term readings from the scar. They expected decay, entropy, some sign that the Horizon Engine's effects would weaken over time. They found the opposite. The constants are stabilizing, one scientist said, disbelief in her voice. Not just holding, improving. Her colleague leaned closer to the display. That's impossible. The engine wasn't designed to self-correct. No, she replied. But something is. Across the human line, deep in regions no alien ship could safely enter, faint activity stirred. Not fleets. Individuals. Human survivors did not rebuild in the way the galaxy expected. There were no grand shipyards, no mass mobilizations, no declarations of rebirth. They rebuilt like survivors always had. Quietly, carefully, with memory guiding every choice. On a barren moon circling a dying star, a small human settlement took shape beneath hardened domes. Children were born there. Few, precious, raised under skies that shimmered oddly where reality bore old scars. They learned early what those scars meant. At night, elders told stories not of victory, but of responsibility. They spoke of a time when humanity realized something no other species had yet accepted. That survival was not a right. It was a task. Admiral Cale Ward did not live to see the settlement grow large. He died aboard the UNS Perseverance, his ship finally laid to rest in a stable orbit beyond the scar. His final orders were simple. No monuments. No names carved into stars. No calls for remembrance beyond what already existed. Let the line speak, he had said. Years later, a council exploration drone, launched without authorization by a curious junior officer, drifted too close to the scar. It did not cross. It couldn't. But its sensors recorded something new. A fluctuation. Not hostile. Not invasive. Deliberate. The drone's feed captured a momentary alignment. Space subtly adjusting itself, reinforcing the boundary without any visible mechanism. Someone was still there. Watching. Maintaining. The footage spread quietly through council channels. It sparked debate, fear, hope, and something unfamiliar to many species. Respect. A special session of the Galactic Council was convened, not in panic, not in emergency, but in reflection. The archivist, now old by his species standards, stood once more at the center of the chamber. We believe the war ended when the entities vanished, he said. But we were wrong. Delegates leaned in. It ended when humanity decided it could. He gestured, and a projection appeared, not of warships or battles, but of the scar itself, shimmering gently across the galaxy like a faint seam in existence. This is not a wall, the archivist continued. It is a reminder of what it costs to protect others, of what happens when a species refuses to look away. A younger delegate asked quietly, "Do you think they'll return?" The archivist considered the question for a long moment. No, he said finally. Not unless they have to. The council passed one final resolution regarding humanity. Not a treaty. Not an alliance. A vow. If the human line ever destabilized, if the universe screamed again, if the impossible returned, the galaxy would answer. Not with panic, not with denial, but together. In the depths beyond the scar, a human watch station recorded the council's broadcast. A woman stood alone in the observation chamber, her uniform plain, her hair streaked with gray. She had been born after the war, raised on stories of loss and endurance rather than glory. Do you think they mean it? A young officer asked beside her. She watched the stars for a moment before replying. I think, she said, that for the first time, they understand what it costs not to. The station's systems hummed softly, reinforcing reality in ways no alien engineer could yet replicate. Small corrections, gentle nudges, invisible acts of guardianship. Humanity did not rule the galaxy. It did not guide it. It did not stand above it. It stood outside it, where the danger came from. And sometimes, when the universe shifted too sharply or old wounds threatened to reopen, something unseen would adjust the balance. A fraction of a degree, a constant nudged back into place, a reminder written into physics itself. Far across the stars, on a council world untouched by war, a child looked up during a lesson and asked a simple question. Teacher, what happened to the humans? The teacher paused, then smiled softly. They went where they were needed, she said. Where's that? The teacher gestured to the night sky. Between us, she said, and the end. And in the quiet beyond the human line, humanity remained what it had always become in its darkest hour. Not heroes, not legends, but the ones who stayed.